Wish I was a lion in the tall grass. Those of you, hello, Captain Kitties, who are listening of those of you who are listening on the debrief, sorry about that. I had some feedback that I had to stop before I went crazy. Are very familiar with how this works. You have downloaded the app, you have called in, and you are here to ask me questions about the latest episode of Bad Faith and anything else that's happening in the world that's on your mind. And those of you who are tuning in on YouTube are probably a little bit more confused because I've only done this once or twice simulcast. I'm doing it this way to introduce you to the broader call-in audience. We will start the conversation here, and then after a period of time, we'll take it over to Callin and finish it. Last time I did 2 hours on here. We ended up doing another 3 hours on Callin. It was a topic, the dating episode. You guys had a lot to say about that. And I probably had a little bit too much to say about that, but we had fun and I really enjoyed all of your feedback. I know that some of you were still in the queue at the end of that episode, so I would not be surprised if some of you want to get some stuff related to that episode off your chest still. But of course, this week we spoke to Matt Stoller, an antitrust expert who really connected the dots on an angle of why we have so much inequality that we don't often discuss, or perhaps don't discuss often enough on the left, which has some really interesting intersections with popular topics like the high meat prices and, of course, the retirement of Justice Breyer, who has been a real antagonist to competitive, pro-competitive antitrust legislation while he's been on the bench. So without further ado, I will go ahead and start the Q&A. Oh, let me orient folks that might not have seen today's episode, since we are now doing call-ins the day of the release of the episode, and many people who listen are not premium subscribers, so did not have access to this full episode. Let me go ahead and play a quick clip just to orient folks as to what we are talking about, and then we can get to the questions.
You know, when the pandemic happened and we had the CARES Act, that was like this moment of bailouts. I mean, everybody got I guess it was like a $600 check and a $1,400 check, and then small businesses got a bunch of loans. But by far, the massive amounts of money, like trillions of dollars, went to big business and Wall Street through the Fed.
Yeah. Or just upward transfer of wealth in America.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason. So Elon Musk, people sometimes complain about the hundreds of billions of dollars that went to small business, which is, it wasn't done well, but it was fine. This SBA kind of sucks, but like we knew that going in. We're going to waste a bunch of money, but it's worth it to preserve some of our businesses. But like, think about it. Elon Musk was worth like $25 billion before the pandemic, and today he's worth $300 billion. Where did that money come from? It's not like Tesla's that much more profitable. It's just that all came from the Fed, right? Like, so if you want to talk about, why do, and those decisions were made by people who have been wrong, like systematically wrong about the effects of their policies. So they'll come to you and they'll say, oh, well, this is the optimal way to do things. And I have a very fancy degree that tells me this, but we know what the actual effect is. And we know that they have been wrong.
So the idea would be, I mean, obviously our current elected leadership thinks very similarly to the people, to just generalize, there's an identity of interest there. But the idea would be hypothetically that if we had people who were not these technocratic economists in charge, people who not only were democratically elected, but
like people who actually have student debt and credit card debt. I mean, instead of all the millionaires that are now on the board of the Fed. I mean, they're all millionaires, like, just to be clear. But
that's not necessarily an issue of the Federal Reserve being independent, right? Like a populist president could nominate a populist. Sorry,
somehow we keep nominating millionaires. I don't know.
Well, somehow. All right. Okay, so we're off to the races. Rebecca, welcome back. What's on your mind?
Hey, thank you. Is it okay if I go in the direction of the discussions you've had about third parties in 2024?
Yeah, of course. Whatever's on your mind.
Really interested in those episodes and listening to different perspectives. And as somebody, and I'm not here to boost my campaign or anything, but as somebody who is running for Congress, I've thought a lot about third parties and in Washington State, we have a top two primary system, which for anybody listening who's not aware, it's like California, where everybody just runs against everybody else in a free-for-all in the primary. There's no Democratic primary. It's just everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then the people with the top two people with the most votes go through to the general.
Mm-hmm.
And in Washington State, you can put whatever you can run as whatever you want. There's no party registration. So the day of filing, I could get to May and I could decide I'm just going to make up my own party and write it in the box. And then that's what will appear next to my name. It could be literally anything. And so it's easy in that sense. And but instead I chose to run as a Democrat. And because of the barriers that the party throws up. And so I've thought about 2024 and like, would it be better for somebody to run as a Democrat for a president or start third party? And then the whole discussion of, well, maybe a Democrat. And then, once the party blocks them and is farther along in the primary season, then they could do essentially what DSA was calling dirty break for congressional candidates, but on the presidential level, basically do a dirty break and then become a third party candidate. And I was wondering if you had looked into the history of the U.S. Labor Party from the 90s that attempted to get off the ground.
No, but I'm very interested to have you tell me about it right now.
Okay, because I am not an expert on it, but I read a long interview with one of the founders in the interview was in Jacobin, and there's been 3 attempts at a labor party. One was in the U.S., one was in the 30s. I don't know much about that. The next one was just some bullshit that Lyndon LaRouche made up, so it wasn't really a labor party attempt. And then the third one was in the 90s, and that was a very serious attempt at building an American labor party, and they got a lot of labor on their side. They created this formalized structure where something like, 20% of American labor or something like that, a very high percentage was represented by their, elected representatives sent from the union to this political party. And it ultimately failed and they just shut it down. And the article or the interview goes into a lot of reasons why, but I thought that would be, if you were Katie Halbert, somebody would be like interested. I think trying to remember, I can't remember, but there was an economist that was on, I think, your show in the past who was involved with it. But I'd be really interested in that because I think we need to, as the left, just learn from the prior attempts that have been done. Like, what would we do differently that they didn't do then? Because they made a very serious, organized effort then. So how would we do it differently now if we were to start a third party? And also, we don't have that much time. I remember 2 years ago, everybody was talking about, we have till 2030 to get to 100% renewable energy economy. And
no one even
now if you go on Sunrise's site, nobody talks about it. If you go to Sunrise's website, they say, by 2030 we need to get to like a mix of renewables and blah blah blah. They're not even on the hard line anymore. But that's how much time we have. So when people are like, oh, just organize, organizing takes time, there aren't any shortcuts. It's like, well, we kind of need a shortcut because we don't have much time. So if people would go back and look at, anyway, I'll stop.
No, don't stop. I wanted to ask you what your decision-making process was to run as a Dem. You referenced the roadblocks they threw up, but specifically given this kind of jungle primary scenario that you're participating in, what made you still choose to run as a Democrat?
Well, the first was, even if you look at polls and both of the parties are extremely unpopular, and something like half of Americans they call themselves independent or say they want a third party, but then when they actually vote, they don't vote that way. So that's, there's the idea in marketing, like you can ask people what they want, but that doesn't mean that's what they're actually going to do and what they're actually going to buy. There's a difference between what people they want or say they want and what they actually do. And when it comes down to it, people just don't really choose third parties. And so it's like, well, do I want to run a campaign it's already so difficult to unseat an incumbent and already such a long shot? Do I want to make it even more of a long shot? So that was one. And then 2 was fundraising. I would be kicked off Act Blue ran as non-Democrat. And that's the platform that all donors, Democratic donors, are used to paying with. And so people listening may remember in the district next to me in Washington State, there was a candidate in 2020, Joshua Callin, and he was running as a Democrat for almost the whole time. Then he got to filing week and he started something called the Essential Workers Party. And this is going back to what I said, like, you can say whatever you want. I could be like the vegan hamburger party, and that's what I could run as. Like, it doesn't mean that there was an existing like organization or anything. He decided he wanted to start this party called the Essential Workers Party, and announced, I'm not running as a Democrat anymore, and that's how he appeared on the ballot. And then he got an email from ActBlue saying, hey, you're not running. We understand you're not running as a Democrat anymore, so you're kicked off our platform. And that's what all of the base, like as a congressional candidate running against a Democrat, what you need a lot of small dollar donations. And where those going to come from? It's the progressive, quote unquote, I know the word progressive doesn't have much meaning anymore, but the base, and the base uses ActBlue to pay. And in terms of just, you're going to get on another platform and then try to convince people to set up an account on this other platform.
Yeah.
Whereas if you send out, like I send out an email, right, and it has express links, and you can just click on it. And if somebody has an ActBlue account, they, with one click, it gives them $7, $10, whatever.
Yeah.
And all they have to do is click on that link in the email and they give the money. And so it might seem small, but it's like, I would take a huge fundraising hit. And I, as running an insurgent campaign, fundraising is already difficult. So that's one thing. Another thing, I would be kicked off of the platform that I use for sending emails, which is the main source of my fundraising. And it's more difficult than you would think to find a good email platform. It's something that's taken up a lot of time in my campaign. It's just finding a way to be able to send emails. It's harder than you would think.
Yeah.
I would be kicked off of that. I don't have access to Van, which is it's the canvassing software. I had it in 2020 and we used that. We couldn't canvass because of the pandemic, but we made almost 1 million phone calls and we used Van for that and recording all the data. But now the state party has decided this time they're not going to let me have it. But they did it in a kind of, I don't know if I want to get into all the detail. They did it in a kind of sneaky way where I can't have access to the state party's version, but I also can't go to the company and buy a separate version like I did in 2020. So I'm blocked from using
What's the
any version of
rationale
Van.
for not being able to go and buy the version independently?
The company Van said you need a official denial from the state party for us to allow you to buy this. It's the same platform, but it uses different data. It's not the National Democratic Party's data. It's just commercial data they bought somewhere. And so NGP says, you need this letter saying you've been denied. So I went to the party and I was like, can I have access like I did last time? I'm not even asking for your data. Would just like to do what I did in 2020. And they said, well, unfortunately, we can't deny you right now because the DNC and all the various state parties have to meet and they have to work out data sharing. So unfortunately, we can't give you either an approval or a denial at this point. And ICP NGP is like, oh, what can I, and it's a delaying tactic. It's just a delaying. So,
yeah, I really appreciate you letting us know about that, Rebecca, because honestly, so much of the pundit class, I completely acknowledge ignorance about all of these logistical things that sometimes get alluded to, but I think it's important to talk about them specifically because there is a cohort of people that will say, I like Nina Turner, okay, but she's running as a Dem and I just can't get behind her, or, insert candidate name. And I totally understand where people are coming from with that. But if you resolve to make that decision, I think that you should make it knowing that there are non-nefarious reasons why people are choosing to run as a Dem. And it's not just kind of a lack of courage or go-get-itness, but there are real obstacles that perhaps we should be talking about it as a community, how to overcome. Like in off cycles, should we be trying to make, shift progressive voters from ActBlue to another platform? Should we be doing that kind of work year round, regardless of the campaign season? Of course, absolutely. Being, clear-eyed about what the obstacles are. At the same time, up and until that point, I do have ambivalence about saddling candidates who are already having an uphill battle against incumbents with all of these logistical hurdles that are enormously time consuming. You have more limited staffs and fewer resources, and it's these are legitimate issues.
Yeah, it's hard, and other people might make the counter argument like it is such an uphill battle, and you have such a small chance of winning. What does it matter if you go third party? You're going to have you already have such a small chance of winning. And it's like, yes, but at least it's more of a chance. Maybe instead of 1% chance, it's a 3% chance of winning, and like, I'm not running a messaging campaign. I'm running to win, and I did last time too, in 2020. But I am also realistic that it's an uphill battle, and my district is not it's not Detroit or New York or these kind of like very densely packed, low turnout districts. It's a very different kind of race. So that's my answer, is like, well, even if we're talking about low percentages, there's still a difference.
Right. And people would have said, of course, that Bernie 2016 was a long shot as well. And so it is what it is. Can you tell people who might not have listened in last time or might not have made it to hour 3 or whatever it is that you called in, a little bit about your race and how they can know more about you and your candidacy?
Yeah, thanks. I'm running in Washington's 6th Congressional District, and you can find me on Twitter, Rebecca for WA. Website's RebeccaParson.com. And I'll stop monopolizing so the other people in line can get to it. But one thing I'd be really interested in, aside from the labor, learning from the 90s labor effort, is direct action and combining that with electoral politics, because I've done a lot of direct action locally, and I would love to see if a third party started and integrate labor, but also have like a strong direct action, national coordinated, organized direct action. That's not just sign waving, but actually shutting stuff down in an organized way across the whole country. So, but anyway, that's all for me.
Rebecca, can you remind me, did you have a name for that 90s Labor Party effort or an article?
Yeah, the long interview was on Jacobin.
But do you remember?
And I can try to pull it up right now, or
well, how about you drop it? Yeah, drop it in the comments of this episode, and I'll definitely pull that, because that's exactly the kind of thing I'd like to be talking to people about on this show. I appreciate you calling in again, and good luck, of course, in Washington 6th.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Doctor, it's good to see you again. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Brianna. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
Okay, so I'm going to participate in derailing the conversation as well.
Go for it.
I want to question that Katie Helper posed to me last call-in, but after I dropped off.
Sure.
She had asked, well, how did, so to preface, I had mentioned that I went on a date with a white lady, even though I decided that I'll marry a person of color. She was asking, like, how did the lady respond to my telling her that I'm going to marry a person of color? Well, she appreciated it. Typically, I'm quite frank to whomever I'm on a date with, and I've noticed that the people appreciate that more. The reason I had like gone a date on with her is because she's a redhead, and God rest her soul. God rest her soul, Miss Frizzle from Magic School Bus. I fell in love with her.
Not Miss Frizzle. Not you taking this poor woman out, getting her hopes up because you have a thing from the 4th grade for Miss Frizzle.
Hey,
she showed you about the circulatory system in your heart was never the same.
Yeah.
Hell, you went to med school. Are you that kind of doctor?
No, I'm a computer scientist with a focus in mobile security.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I thought I was gonna marry a redhead when I was a child, but I thought I was gonna marry a Frizzle or marry a redhead as a child.
Oh Lord. Okay.
So I even told her the reason why we were on a date, so and she found it amusing. Just cause just to quickly end so we can get back to the main conversation. So like even though I communicated frankly the type of person that I want to marry, the conversation kept going on the date. We had lots of fun conversing, and even now we text each other about other people that we go on dates with. So she, long story short, be frank with the person. She didn't respond negatively. She appreciated the honesty, and we're still cool now. So that's all I want.
I gotta ask you, how did that date end?
In what way?
Did you two end up enjoying each other's company before, in a romantic way, before your friendship continued on down its platonic path? No comment.
He asked me about my and I told you I'm a very physical person. And I think I'm adept at like conversing with people. So let's just say I lived I may not have gotten married, but
Okay. All right. Okay. You've given me your pound of flesh, and maybe also you gave the redhead a pound of flesh too. I'm gonna move on before I get myself into too much trouble. Thank you, Doctor, for following up. I really appreciate you putting a button on that story.
No problem. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. I'm going to read a couple comments from the YouTube chat. Angato, thank you for your contribution. Says, we need to secure and protect our voting apparatus for real. For sure. 100%. And ooh, I thought I saw another one here, but I've misplaced it. If that was you, I apologize. All right. Let's hear from Kusha. How you doing?
Hello. Good evening, Brianna. Are you able to hear me?
I can. What's in your mind?
Definitely. Well, just to begin, based off what you were just telling Doctor, I just want to let you know that was probably the most eloquent way I've ever heard anyone inquire about someone else's bedroom activity.
Hey,
So,
I just meant a kiss goodnight. I wasn't implying anything about a literal bedroom.
you were insinuating something pretty clearly, right? And I give you credit for how stealthy you were at it. So the Harvard law background works really well in a variety of ways.
Yeah, they teach you that in torts. What's on your mind though? What did you call in to ask about? Certainly not that.
Definitely not. Well, it just came up as you mentioned it. So, but what I did want to ask you though was I had the opportunity to watch much, if not all, of the video you had with Matt today, and that you uploaded. And there was something that said at the 8-minute mark. And I just want to preface, because the quote from Matt starts with the word they, and it's in reference to what you describe as this cult, quote, this cult of folks pretending that they actually know what's going on about the economy, that is, and stuff like that. And so he says, quote, they pretend to know what is going to maximize output, but it's all just falsified, but it's all just falsified. What they're doing is they're just trying to find ways of consolidating markets, end quote. And so I really want to pick through that exact line, or those two sentences that Matt says, because I think it has a lot to do with antitrust in general, as we understand it in the US legal system and through the economic system of American capitalism, which of course in large part dictates global capitalism, given that the US has essentially a hegemony with its allies in that system. But just to give a little bit of my background, I'm a fervent proponent of the worker council ownership model, which is what I believe Professor Richard Wolff constantly refers to in his description as labor co-ops or labor cooperatives. And most especially in my view, I'm a fervent proponent for the super big multinational corporations and business entities. So with that background in mind, what I'd like to inquire about, what I'd really like to hear your analysis on is, isn't it the goal ultimately to have, few but super large, super efficient, super productive enterprises that treat all the employees fairly and decently, in large part because all employees will own and operate the enterprise? Because as far as I see this discussion of economic competition from business in the United States and other countries that have this spread of multinational corporations, especially from the stance of antitrust law in the United States, It's rooted in the framework and the deeply entrenched structure of modern information age capitalism. So now the last point I'll make before I really, because I know I've mentioned a lot of things for you to chew over. I know you have brilliant analysis. That's why I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Is it so much the business combinations, like in the forms of mergers and acquisitions and sales of assets and tender offers, that are inherently bad? Or is it more so the political and economic power concentrated in the hands of a super small minority of billionaires? And I think in 2021, according to the World Population Review, it was 724 billionaires in the US, and the hectomillionaires that thereby exploit this unconscionable asymmetry to take advantage of the poor and working class and promote cruel policies of austerity and warmongering through resource extraction and profiteering, and most concerningly for their own interests, rather than creating a better world for all human beings first and foremost. And so,
your question is whether or not it's the problem is too few enterprises, or if that you wouldn't care about the number, the monopolistic nature, if they were worker owned. It still strikes me that why would there still be an interest in having? I mean, you seem to be thinking there's a value in having a smaller number of enterprises. What is the value in that?
Please, I would love to elaborate on it if you let me. So I was having this discussion with my dad. It might have been yesterday, but I was essentially an example of a company like Disney, because when I hear Professor Wolf talk about example, because he says worker co-ops, labor co-ops often, but I was just trying to think of an example of a company super big, its services, and Disney really comes to mind. And I was trying to work through, because I know Disney has so many subsidiaries that we all know and love, like Marvel Comics or Pixar or Geographic or ABC or LucasArts.
Kusha, you're cutting in and out a little bit. I don't know if you're walking around or.
Oh, no, I'm not walking. My apologies, though, if it cut out. In fact, I didn't really move anywhere. But I was just saying that Disney has many subsidiaries, right? It has ABC, it has Marvel, it has Pixar, LucasArts, ESPN, Hulu, National Geographic, FX, 20th Century Studios, and others. And so if I look at it like this, why would there necessarily need to, like, Disney has these subsidiaries, right? And they are competing in some, shared areas at points, right? Of course, like you'll see like TV shows and films be put out on like the FX area, but you also see it be put out through Marvel, and you also see some stuff through LucasArts, right? Because Star Wars is LucasArts and Spider-Man is Marvel, and the Marvel superheroes like Thor and Captain America. But Disney doesn't necessarily mind like the competition between them. It does mind, I would say, maybe to qualify my statement, like to stop a cannibalization happening from
I think I understand your point, and my answer would be that I don't think that anything that Disney is doing would be characterized as cannibalization or any real competition. I think that to the extent that Disney has, I mean, it's streaming now mostly, so I don't know how much these programming decisions matter, but Disney is not putting up similarly situated competitive shows against each other. That's the whole point of having integrated programming like that. If Disney has a show that's the equivalent of A Bug's Life, and also a show that's the equivalent of whatever that other cartoon is that came out about ants, right? And they're like basically the same show. They're not putting them up next to each other, right? Those are Armageddon and Deep Impact aren't coming out of the same production company. Right, that's the whole point. Like Disney is not cannibalizing its own product. It's playing the Super Bowl next to, the Real Housewives finale, because the people who are interested in one are not interested in the other. Those aren't operated by the same franchises, but you get my point. So I'm not necessarily. I think that it's obviously right that a worker-owned monopoly, or something close to a monopoly, is preferable than the alternative that we have right now. But the reality, I don't see any advantage from having fewer businesses in that context either. But again, I'm not an expert on this. This is a much better question for Richard Wolff, and I think next time we have him or someone like him, Yanis Varoufakis, who's also spoken about this on the show, I'll definitely put that question to him, and I appreciate you calling in, Kusha.
Absolutely. It was my great pleasure. Is it possible, if I may add one last thing before I stop talking, or would you just call it?
I think I have to move on to the next caller, Kusha, but only because
Absolutely.
Kusha, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, you kind of front load these questions. And I feel like it's my
to give some
responsibility to
historical
take care of the whole community
Yes.
here. But I
Yes,
appreciate how much thought you've put into it, and I appreciate you calling and being such an attentive listener to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your transparency and really appreciate
All right,
the
thank you.
consideration you put to answering it.
Keep the faith.
I'll keep the faith. Thank you.
All right, Tom. You are up next. Unmute yourself and let me know what's on your mind. Oh, it's a little stuck. Why is that stuck?
Comment like I usually do.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so just as a follow-up to the pre-baller's comment, it got me thinking of, you guys may have ever heard of this company. It's called Quant.
It's called what? I'm sorry, you're cutting in a little bit too.
It's currently
Tom, you're real glitchy for me. I can't hear you. Now you're muted, but try again.
Can you hear me now?
I can, loud and clear. Okay, let's try this.
All right, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so I don't know if you, I mean, obviously, nobody pays attention to construction out of fun, but yeah, the previous caller and Matt Stoller's comments reminded me of this. There's this company called Quanta Services, and I was thinking about the model of monopolization the previous caller was talking about in Matt. And one thing I think that might become more of a trend now, it's not that companies are buying up smaller companies and rebranding them. Quanta Services purchased out Callin Construction, which was one of the biggest and best companies you could hope to work for if you were working in my industry. And, gradually things are changing. They're becoming a little bit more corporate, more obsessed with their bottom line. And it's only a matter of time before the process of gradual deunionization starts. But they were able to do this kind of like, under the table. Nobody really knew. Callin hasn't rebranded. It's still Callin Construction. You still see the logos.
Mhm.
So most people don't know a lot of the companies in New York construction are starting to get gobbled up by these big kind of corporations. That's just a comment on the last guy's comment, just to elaborate on it. Here's my question that kind of came to mind. And also your first caller hit on a lot of this. And I was thinking of your episode with Miss Figaro, Tesla Figaro, I think. I'm kind of like, I might be a little too black pilled for my own good, but
how do you mean?
I've become increasingly kind of like bitter and jaded about a lot of the online left. I mean, I'm not saying you because you've worked on a political campaign, you have skin in the game. There are people who have skin in the game, but it seems so much of like the modern left is like its own self-sustaining ecosphere, and it's totally separate from real world politics. And for all the shit we can give AOC and the squad and all this other stuff, at the very least they kind of put their money where their mouth is. And especially Teslin's episode made me realize this. Like, who is our equivalent of the Federalist Society? Where's the kind of like borderline sociopathic leftist politician? No, like I'm talking like where the fuck is like the left wing voter caging, gerrymandering, Supreme Court rigging? And I'm increasingly beginning to realize, maybe with the gutting of any kind of like real authoritarian lefts, I don't mean to sound like a fucking like red brown fash over here, but I think I promise my question's almost done. I just think and I, maybe that Anna or Hannah, whatever, the one that's always talking psychology, maybe she can elaborate on this. But I wonder if like people like Jonathan Haidt talk about progressive minded people being very high on like empathy.
Yeah.
In terms of traits, but I don't like, from my marginal kind of association with DSA types, I don't find progressives and leftists to be particularly like aggressive or highly competitive people. And I think there's something about the right, the way they circle the wagon, they have that like built-in kind of tribalism, and the way they're like extremely cutthroat in how they do their politics. Sometimes I wonder if it's not just the profit-based model that we're like fighting.
There's something constitutional like in our nature that makes us less suited to that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I think around 1-6, I mean, no one could really say it, but there was this sense that, oh, the left has a lot to actually be angry about, and we would never, we have a legitimate case to be marching at the Capitol, and we would never do this. And there's something that borders on envy as we're watching these hooligans, do what they did, or, you know, even the extent to which they had this big rally this past weekend, this anti-mandate rally. I would have loved to have seen that many people mobilized around, I don't know, healthcare, around force the vote. So I don't know. Maybe there is an intellectual kind of psychological reason to it, but I also think that, frankly, something that doesn't exist on the right that exists on the left is self-censorship from within our own ranks. So, to be honest, even though I know a lot of conservatives don't like Trump or were embarrassed by him, and think that some of this CRT stuff or the anti-mask stuff is kind of silly, they just keep their mouths closed about it. Like, I don't go. Maybe it's because I'm not in those communities, and so maybe it's my own bias. I completely caveat that could be the case, but I don't turn on Fox News and see them calling out the more radical parts of the right. And you can say that, you can criticize them for that and say, oh, they don't have integrity. Oh, that they're why fascism is allowed to bloom. But being the radical faction on the left that isn't actually that radical, and getting so much blowback from the mainstream left. We've talked endlessly on this program in the dating context and other contexts about how most of our conflicts end up coming from liberals, not conservatives, and how half the people on the men's panel last week said they would more easily date Republican women than liberal women, right? Or men. Like, that says something about the censorship that comes from within our own ranks. And there is this instinct to say, don't do that, don't try that. You're going to look dumb if attempt that. You're going to make us look bad. I remember when the maniac shot those conservatives in the baseball field, and he had tweeted once about Bernie Sanders or whatever, and everyone rushed to blame Bernie Sanders. How many right-wing attacks have had manifestos accompanied with them that explicitly said that they support some politician or some conservative ideology, and that stuff never sticks because there's no apology. Donald Trump modeled this better than anyone else. If you don't even apologize for things you're being criticized for, it's very difficult to build a media cycle around you that sticks. If you just don't acknowledge it, whatever, I wasn't wrong. And you can just gaslight people. You can gaslight an entire country into doing whatever you want them to do. And obviously, I'm not sitting here saying Trump is the model for our political agenda, but there is something I think to be learned from what happens when you have the freedom to try stuff within your own kind of political faction. And that freedom just does not seem to exist among the broad institutional left.
Yeah, 100%. I will totally concede. I had massive penis envy when I watched Wednesday. Everybody's losing their shit over, oh my God, it's Day of Remembrance, and they got Lin-Manuel and they're doing all this cringy shit. And I sat there really just thinking to myself, dude, I really fucking hope these people blow that building up.
Okay, I can't endorse that, Tom, and you're gonna get me demonetized.
Yeah. Sorry, do not endorse it. We are not advocating political violence.
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying, and there are plenty of countries where politicians get into fist fights. They're beating each other with canes. It's
that British Parliament video you're thinking of.
maybe to some extent, politicians should be kind of sort of afraid, just a little bit, some level of accountability.
Well, they should be afraid, and that doesn't mean that doesn't mean of violence, but that's what Chris Hedges said. I think not the last time he was on the show, but the show before, that the reason that we don't see any response from our politicians, the reason why there is no political response, why there's that Princeton study from 2014, was it, that said there's a 5% chance that the people's will ever be executed in government, and there's an 80% chance a corporation's will be executed in government. I mean, it's because there is no fear. We have no leverage. We have no accountability system anymore. There's no media accountability. There's no electoral accountability. Incumbents are largely safe. It's a money game. A global pandemic and millions of people dying isn't enough to motivate the population. People are so disaffected that they genuinely don't think that anything is going to work. It's not that they don't care. They just have been trained, not wrongly, but they have been trained to believe that they could lie down in the street and die and nobody would care, because so many Americans, millions of Americans, have been lying down in the street and dying for years, and literally nobody cares. 64,000 people a year before COVID were dying from a lack of health care. God knows what number they're going to come up with when all of the dust settles and the bodies are counted of the last two years, or however long this is going to last, you know?
Yeah. It's like I'm talking about New York construction. This will be my last comment, and then
Sure.
I'll shut the fuck up. Sorry. I'm from New York, born and raised, but I actually recently just moved out to Seattle, Washington.
Oh, are you going to
And
vote?
people
Are you in Rebecca's district?
No, I don't think. No, I'm in Queen Anne. This is like Bougieville over here.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I don't think this is her district. I mean, she could leave. I'll look her up right after this. Promise, and I'll donate to her if she is. But yeah, this is like, people talked about the homeless problem here, and it's fucking crazy, because this is like, radical neo shit lib city. You got like all this like, oh, Black Lives Matter signs everywhere, and then there's like some homeless black guy, and all like the supposedly progressive people are just like fucking stepping over him. I swear to God, it's like one of the first things I saw when I got here. On 15th Avenue, there's an animal clinic, the big fucking sign, and everybody's just stepping over this homeless dude. Like, nobody gives a shit over here. So yeah, I 100%. I feel what you're saying. All right, I'll shut up.
Well, thank you for calling, Tom. I always appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, Kyle, you're up next. What's on your mind?
Hello.
Hey, Kyle.
Hi, Brianna. How's it going?
I'm doing well. What are you thinking about this evening?
Man, nothing too much. Like, how was your day? Like, give us a little rundown. Like, last time I talked to you, you went to the Hill, and you're talking about how you had like a really nice makeover they gave you. Like, what was your day like?
Well, I normally do a weekly Hill hit on Wednesdays, and they asked if I could do it today. So I had to get up and get dressed, which is why I decided to simulcast, because normally I don't put makeup on on Mondays.
Yeah.
And here we are. So we might as well let somebody other than the viewership over at Rising see it. And after I did my Hill hit, I did some posting. I had a couple of calls today with some folks about some follow-up businessy type things. I did some scheduling for some good upcoming episodes with some congressional candidates. I'm very excited about Thursday's panel, which we've got put together to talk about all of this Joe Rogan cancel Spotify and Michigas. And I watched a couple episodes of The Sopranos.
Nice. So, like, for your work, like, throughout the day, you'd say like you reach out to like a lot of people and have to network, make really important calls and all that. You pretty generally like.
Well, it depends. I mean, it's funny how the day fills up. I used to get really down on myself because I'm like, you don't have a real job. How did you manage to get through this whole day and nothing actually happened?
You should be like, I know it's guilty. You feel like it's guilty to feel that way, but like, no, you should definitely obviously be like grateful. I don't want to tell you to be grateful or whatever, but like, shoot, I have like a job where I could work remote, and like, shit, I feel guilty and like, like, grateful for this.
But it's stuff I have to do. Like, okay, if I'm going to do this episode tomorrow, I have to read Glenn Greenwald's posts that he's been writing about the Spotify stuff. I listened to his Callin episode about the subject. I read a number of articles about the subject. I read all of the tweets and things that the other guests that are going to come on tomorrow have written and said about it, to try to get a sense of the contours of the arguments, and took some notes, reviewed some First Amendment law. I got to consume all the content. You know what I mean?
My goodness.
Which takes time.
Yeah, definitely. I can't. I went to a STEM major, electrical engineering. I can't stand reading, to be honest. Luckily, my work, I'm just like making drafts for poll plans for. I don't want to say it, but I'm making just working utility poles, and like, well, for me today, like example, I had to call somebody to see if we could possibly, they would be okay with putting a pole in their yard, and like you kind of have to like. I mean, we have the right of way, so we could just do it, but we don't want to look bad, and like I don't want to just like ruin someone's lot if they have like plans for it. So like sometimes I get really nervous because sometimes people call back like angry as heck, and like I was working Verizon before. I'll say it now because I don't know. And like I ended up getting to a point where I would be barking at people back, and like I didn't take it, like no. And so like luckily this job, like I'm mostly just working on a computer, working like with some close people, and just like answering questions here and there, and like, oh, does this look good? This need to be corrected, this and that. And it's like mostly just doing homework like all the time.
Yeah.
So like Yeah, that's I kind of feel you on that one.
That
But
problem
like,
solving work is frustrating. I mean, as a lawyer, people are always asking me and saying things like, "Oh, you're a lawyer, you know this. You're a lawyer, you know that." I'm like, no, you don't sit around in law school memorizing stuff. You know, that's not how it works. They
you learn
train
how
you
to
how
think
to
though.
think
Yeah,
exactly,
yo,
and then you spend your whole
exactly.
life Googling stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it's like you ask me a legal question, I'm gonna Google it. I'm gonna do exactly what you did, except I have access to Westlaw and I can look up, case law and precedent and give you an actual answer as to how this is probably going to come out. And I can understand the case law better because I have legal training, but I'm just Googling it.
Do you feel like what you paid, you got what like worth what you paid for? Like, do you still owe student debt as well? It's like a double question.
Yes, sirree, I do owe student debt
Yeah.
for sure. I
But
mean,
yeah,
I think
that May coming around, I'm not looking forward to that. I want everyone to just like not pay back, and you should like, no, we're not doing this. Biden, this is your problem. You look what you did.
yeah, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know I mean, we certainly have done some episodes about this and whether or not there's going to be a meaningful, organized debt strike on May 1st when the moratorium is supposed to be lifted. I checked my mail today and I have lots of mail from SoFi and all of these refinancers who are trying to get some last grasp at the apple or something, or maybe exploit the fact that maybe we have anticipation, resentment about, anxiety about the payments starting up again later this year. I don't know
Yeah, I'm
what.
trying to come up with a bunch of different plans, and like I don't know. I'm just trying to see what they're asking for first, because they're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, you make enough. You could pay like 300 plus," and that's gonna just end me. Like, oh god, like that extra 300 not end me. I mean, honestly, like I know people have second jobs. I don't have to have a second job, so I'm stupid grateful for that. But like,
Yeah, but nobody has, like, whatever it is. I mean, nobody has. And I don't mean to. I'm not trying to like compare, but I'm not trying to compare because obviously I was making a salary where I can make these payments, but like mine were $2,300 a month.
oh my god,
So
oh
like
my god.
I know that, yes, I'm grateful that like I earned a large income as a lawyer, but like it wasn't so large that I didn't feel $2,300 a month. Do you know what I
Yo,
mean?
2,300. That's my whole month, pretty much. Like,
Right, which made me
I
terrified when if I lost my job, if I felt job insecurity too. I wasn't the greatest lawyer. I was always being threatened like your hourly count
don't
is
count.
low and all this stuff. So I was afraid that if I lose my job, my monthly expenses are so high that even if I have savings, it goes like in a blink because my expenses are so
Savings
high.
go so fast. No, 2020 was the worst year of my life. I got kicked out the house because I was way too like depressed and stuff. Because I didn't get my degree in my 2018 when I was supposed to. I had failed 2 classes last semester. So I saw a friend get killed in a mass shooting in Jacksonville, Florida.
I'm so
Twitch tournament.
sorry.
His name, Elijah Michael Clayton. Yeah, it was really devastating, and that was like the beginning of my last semester in college, and like that messed me up so bad, and I became so obsessed with like politics, even more so since 2016, and like I was way too focused on politics, and like that stuff's all like takes away from my work. Like I'm trying to learn other stuff, like that's just like takes like if you have anxiety about stuff, you can't think about it because you don't care about it, and you're just like, this is stupid. I'd rather be thinking about like real stuff. And like, yeah, so it set me back. But yeah, 2020 was crazy. I got kicked out, and like I had a decent savings because I had like a 19-hour job. I'm from LA. I was living in LA at the time. I was working at Cannabis Lab. I was working at my second one, making like 19 an hour. So I had like a decent savings. I was living with my mom, but she kicked me out, and I was just like bouncing around for a while, and my entire savings like 6,000 like in 6 weeks. Like I was homeless. Granted, I was honestly not gonna front. I was out of my mind, really panicking, really weak. So crazy to survive that. But like my grandparents took me in after I ended up, going in and out, a couple of like hospital visits and stuff like that, and then just landing into like a little program for a month, whatever. Yeah, that's a lot more than I wanted to share for real. But like,
look, Kyle, that's really relatable because in the last episode I said every single detail about my personal dating life that I absolutely should not have shared. But I want you to feel comfortable sharing here because I think a lot of people who are listening relate to your story, and we don't hear. Look, people call me an elitist. I own it, but like I like to have a space where we can all hear what everybody else is going through. Because isn't that the whole point of the solidaristic project? Not that we're all exactly the same, but we can all relate to each other in these ways. So I appreciate your vulnerability in sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you. I really wanted to talk, like I really appreciate the space. You know, like I said, I don't really get to talk too much at work, so I don't want to like mess up like relationships at work, and I want to keep it very professional, and I want to make six figures somewhere down the line, so I don't want to mess that up. And so like I kind of like reserved. I only have one friend out here. I'm living in Charlotte, North Carolina. I moved out here from LA, and like trying to make it. My one friend's gonna move back to Ohio, that's where I met him. I went to the University of Dayton, studied electrical engineering there. And he's going back, and I have one other friend that lives here as well, but he's kind of young. He's like 21, and like I don't know. I feel like he still has like a naive perspective, especially when it comes to dating. Because like now, I mean, I'm getting comfortable enough, or like, I mean, this week I kind of like balled out because I tried to get some like new clothes because I had like nothing. I had all my stupid homeless clothes, and so I need to get some new clothes because I wanted.
What did you buy? What's your date outfit? What's it look like?
You hit up on my Instagram. I got like some of my clothes on there. Like if I get a date, like she just show up like, oh, this is the same exact fit as your pic. I'm like, yeah.
Whatever.
You already accepted. Yeah.
Whatever. Look, I told this story on the women's episode, a dating episode we did in August, and low key, the guy I was dating got mad and stopped dating me after that episode aired. But I had one go-to date outfit. Like I bought this Reformation dress, and y'all know, the girls know that Reformation is not cheap. I bought this Reformation dress. I was like, I'm gonna get everywhere out of it possible. So that was my go-to date dress. I felt fire in this dress. I used to get compliments from the waitresses and stuff when I would walk into the restaurant.
Oh, when you have women compliment
the women, exactly. Like, the women knew what was up. Exactly.
No, what does it matter what the man said? Man, like
exactly.
We're all desperate out here.
You should wear what feels good. Wear what makes you feel lucky. Maybe don't post it on Instagram unless you absolutely have to. Because once you start posting on Instagram, everybody can see it. But like whatever.
Yeah.
Don't get shamed out of it.
Gotta be a little strategic with it. You know, like be careful what you post, this and that. Yeah, I definitely like. Try to not be like too crazy political. 2020 was crazy. That was like after George Floyd, LA was going wild. Like I was like, one of my friends were in the protest, yelling at cops. And I'm like, oh shit, like I want to be there, but I'm scared. I don't know, like I'm not trying to be there. And like, that's just my mom moved out the city to the burbs, so I was just riding that privilege that she established at that time. But hey, she kicked me out of that, so whatever.
Well, look, it sounds like you're on the up and up. Check back in with us in a little bit and let us know how things are going in Charlotte and on the dating scene and with Verizon.
And not Verizon, definitely not Verizon. Oh, well, I'm still using them though. They're actually pretty good. I'm not gonna cap. Like they're a little expensive, but we get a deal. But yeah, whatever. All right, take care.
Take care, Kyle. Grace, you're up next. Welcome back. What's on your mind? Oh, wait, first, before you answer that, I want to read off the screen. Catherine Nichols wants to know how to access video streams. I think I've seen her comments in the Patreon, so I want to make this really clear. Patreon subscribers not only get an extra episode every month that drops on Monday, every week rather, that drops on Monday. So every Monday you get an additional episode to what everybody else gets. You also get video of that episode, which drops a little bit later in the day than the full audio, just because Ben has to edit it and get it together. So I put a link to the video as a Patreon post. So you'll see the post of the episode audio, and then a couple hours later, you'll see the post of the video. Click on the video, and it's basically an unlisted YouTube link, and you can watch it there. That's how, Catherine. I hope that's clarifying. Okay. Go for it, Grace.
Hey, before I start, what's the song you play at the beginning?
Oh, that's so funny. It's a friend of it's like the brother of this guy that I maybe was dating, who has this group. And like, I really liked it, and he won't sue me because I know him. So I use it for these things here. This song.
Can I?
Yeah. It's called I Wish, and the group is called Quarter Water.
Quarter Water. Okay, awesome. I love it. But anyway, yeah, I want to talk about how we can come for these companies. And just like, why aren't we boycotting them? Why are we still ordering from Amazon? I'll say people, I think we're on the same page, and I'm like, but you're still ordering from Amazon though? Like, we can't give it up. But I really feel like we got to harness the economic power and then use that in conjunction to like build things around electoral things through that as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I remember at various points people bring up boycotts, and the people that like are in charge and know things, all of the organizer types, they at each of these moments when people have been like boycott Amazon, like around the Bessemer protests, Bessemer Union Drive, there were folks who said, okay, well, let's support the Amazon workers by boycotting. And then all of the organizers said, no, don't do that. We want to have the threat of us withholding their labor. We don't want to hurt the company through this other prong, right? Like we want to be the one that's controlling the lever of stress that's on Amazon. I don't know, like that was this rationale that was put out. And I accepted it, like whatever, they're organizing. I'm not trying to do anything that's going to upset their efforts. But I can't say that I 100% understand it. So maybe that's just me. But it does seem like every time there is one of these movements to say we're going to boycott this or that product, there are this chorus of voices, again, from within the broad left, that has these, I don't know, am I the only one who's seen this, that says things like, this isn't effective for that reason, and this isn't really going to work, and this is not how real organizing works, and all of this kind of stuff? Because I'm with you. I will confess here, I'm going to say things that I admit things I shouldn't say. I have not had an Amazon account. I made it a really long time without an Amazon account. I just bent the knee and got one like maybe 6 weeks ago, because I was having some grocery delivery problems, and I bent the knee and I got it so that I could get. I confess it was because it was to get some groceries, and I felt guilty about it, but it also just kind of felt like, well, me not having an Amazon account, one person in the middle of the world, isn't doing anything for anybody, and I'm just getting worse quality food for no reason, or ordering out for no reason, because it's not a real organized boycott. If somebody told me, the same with student debt, the student debt strike, if somebody told me we're all going to do this together, cancel our accounts, don't pay our loans, we're doing this together, then I'm completely on board. But I don't know why. It doesn't seem like there's a real energy or appetite for that.
Yeah, I feel like, we have to be the somebodies, I guess. And I just personally think that like Amazon's a good place to start because they control prices, and that they vary between, it's like not, because people are like, well, what are you going to go to Walmart? And it's like, well, Walmart, at least we're all paying the same price. We're all paying the same price for the same goods. And that's kind of a distinction. So yeah, and I was totally like not buying Oreos,
Yeah. Well, that stuff's easy. I don't know. I don't
right.
buy, I don't know. Maybe that's just my consumption habits.
I don't either, but I was like saying to my husband in the gas station, like, put down the Frito-Lays, like stand in solidarity with striking workers.
Yeah.
But
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just think I think it's an opportunity. We just have to pick one and do it. And then like, as far as like these other monopolistic, structures, we can also use other like nonviolent resistance tactics that don't necessarily, not everyone's built for going out in the streets. And so, we could also all turn off our power at the same time of the day, use disruption, because I think you got to disrupt it. And I feel like people are downtrodden right now, but like the thing is, we have, I don't know, when people are standing up, the power is working.
Yeah. It's interesting because, I was thinking about Stoller talking about some of the meat price issues, and, no one's talking about, when you turn on TV, no one's talking about the idea that the price of meat has anything to do with monopolies. And I can see a world where instead of there being this antagonism against Democrats spending and driving up the cost of meat, there's a solidaristic relationship between farmers who aren't getting the pass-through costs, right? Who aren't getting the benefit of these rising costs because they're being exploited also by these 4 management companies, Tyson and whatever the other 3 are. And for us to be able to leverage their exploitation and the consumer's ire into something that looks more like a movement than letting the right just run away with this argument that somehow meat is expensive because Biden doesn't love America and burgers and spent too much on social welfare programs.
Yeah, I just think about like when Cory Booker was running and they were like, he's a vegan, he's gonna ban meat, and they were like, oh my god. But I actually, like, with something like the meat prices, I think here locally, at least where I live, like local meat is actually more in line. I'm a vegetarian, but local meat is more in line price wise with like what just factory meat is at this point. So Yeah, I mean, I just think we have to like look at those angles. Also, I tried to do something that you asked this week. I made a TikTok
Oh, did you really?
about the BNSF strike. I just wanted to shout that out. That just got struck down by it's a railroad.
Mm.
And it's owned by Warren Buffett, and they just a federal judge in Texas just barred 17,000 workers from going on strike because they know bring the supply chain to its knees. And they've stepped in, but I just want to shout them out because like that's something I'm not hearing anyone covering right now.
Yeah, good call. Do you want to shout out your TikTok handle?
It's at Mary Moon 3 with 3 O's, but honestly, like it has like 11 views. It's terrible.
Let's get you to 12. Let's get you to at least 20 views. Well, thank you for flagging that. Like, that's funny is it's difficult now that I'm doing these straight up long form episodes. There's fewer opportunities to just do a quick hit of a rundown of the news. So I would like to start to try to do some more live streams where we do more of that, because there are so many things that go under the radar that need to be discussed. So I appreciate you flagging it here. Great.
I just want to uplift the labor movements. Also, just future thing. I would love for you to talk about. We need to talk about Bill Cosby.
Oh, have you watched? I have not.
I did 4 hours straight last night, and my brain is in.
Well, because I kind of objected to the premise of the title.
Well, exactly.
Do we need to talk about that?
Exactly. Or like, yeah.
And you know, whatever. I have mixed feelings. You know, what's his face, the host of that, W. Kamau Bell. His podcast with Hari Kondabolu was one of my favorites before 2016. You know,
I used to listen to it too.
I loved Politically Interrupted, and when I started this podcast, my idea, like, I liked there's something about the levity mixed with the facts, mixed with the sound effects and the little like interruptions where it's like, let me explain this concept and then go back to the interview. Like there was something light and fun and like infotainment-y about it that I just really liked, and I thought they had really good chemistry with each other. Then 2016 got going and it got a little libbish, and I remember them making fun of Jill Stein, and I was like, even though Hari, I think, was very pro Bernie and W was like Bernie curious. Then after they made fun of Jill Stein, apparently her team reached out and they interviewed her on the show and was so compelling that Hari voted for her in California. And I think W, I don't know if he disclosed whether he did or not, but he was like Stein curious. And that made me like them again. But it seems like Hari was always the one that was more to the left and more willing to like listen. And I'm afraid that W might not have handled this issue in the way that I would have liked. And that is why I saw the title of that series and immediately was like, this is not for me. But Grace, if you're telling me I need to watch it for the discourse, I will watch it for the discourse.
I mean, I'm just thinking like in terms of when you did the Sex and the City episode, it would be cool to get like a panel together. I don't honestly think that I'm the best person to speak to my opinions on the matter, but yeah, I definitely, it's a lot. And also, once you get done watching The Sopranos, the new one is utter trash.
There's a new Sopranos?
Yeah, they made a movie. It's called like The Saints of Newark, I think.
With the same characters? Except I guess Tony gets, I mean, I haven't seen it yet, but I
he's
alive,
like,
so I know what
he's
happens.
like, it's his childhood story and they fucked it all up and it's really awful. So I loved The Sopranos, but the remake is awful.
Well, that's a bummer, but now I'm going to probably watch it because I love a hate watch.
I know. Yeah, exactly. But anyway, well, I appreciate you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Grace. You too. I'm going to read off the screen. Lisa Mojica points out that Zephyr T-Chat has a good explainer on why not to do boycott. So definitely want to get her back on the pod. When she was running for office, we were planning to have her scheduled, but then she ended her run. So we dropped off contact, but I don't know. Maybe I should try to get her back in the queue. But first, Anna, you were called out by name earlier as someone who might be able to offer some psychological perspective of why the left doesn't seem to be able to get as riled up and active as the right does and storm the Capitol and such. What do you think?
Was I really? I must have missed that.
Yes, an earlier caller, it might have been Tom, was kind of fetching
okay.
about why it is that the left never gets off its tuchus, and wondering if there was something like constitutionally specific about leftists that made us unable to kind of act with the, strength that is required to get things done politically in this country and instill fear in our leadership that makes them responsive to the people's needs.
Oh, geez. Oh man, I don't know. I think. Well, I don't know. I think that
Ooh, Anna, you just went to a weird buzzing noise. Get back in the queue, Anna, and I will bring you up. I'm going to make Day the next caller. Anna, I will come back to you. I promise. Just get back in the line. And I'm also going to take this moment to go ahead and end this stream. So you guys stay here on Callin, but we've been on YouTube for about an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and end this YouTube stream. As a reminder, this is an episode of the debrief on Callin that I'm simulcasting so that people who aren't familiar with Callin can get a sense of what's going on over there. And join the conversation. You just download the app, the Callin app. It's one word, Callin. And you go to the show. It's called The Debrief, or you can search for my name, follow me and the show, and you will get notifications about when I schedule the new episode. I'm doing episodes of The Debrief the same day the episodes of Bad Faith come out, so Mondays and Thursdays. Broadly, we're here to talk about the new episode, but we can also talk about whatever else is on your mind and what's going on in the news. I appreciate all of you coming to listen here on YouTube. Come over to Callin, continue the conversation. Day is one of our favorite callers. So if you are not listening right now, you're going to be missing out on some good stuff. And everyone, regardless of whether you have Apple or Android, can listen to the episodes once they post, even if you can't call in and participate because the phone app is only for iOS at this point. Everyone can listen in the browser app after the podcast air. I know that's not ideal, but they're working on I'm sure they're working on Android accessibility. So to everyone on YouTube, keep the faith. Bye-bye. Day, what is on your mind?
Hey, first of all, thank you. That was really kind of you. So I want to